Hey everybody, good morning. It's 10 o'clock, Wednesday, February 17th, 2021. Very cold and wet, rainy day. But today, let's see, here's our course policy sheet. Today is our first meeting after the practical, which was last week. Hope everybody did well on that. I think the grades were pretty good. Today we start information for our second practical. This is week 6 right here. It says the integumentary system and the skeletal muscles. And that's what we're going over today. And then after this week, we'll do the skeleton. And then before you know it, March 10th is going to be your practical on all this, your exam on all this. So what do we need to study for this? Well, again, everything's on my courses, and I'm going to show you what it is. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm sharing the screen right now, I hope, and I think I'm recording. Is everything recording and everything? I think it is. Yeah, it looks like everything is. But what I'm going to do is basically show you where everything's located on my courses and kind of go through it like that. And so I'm going to do here is, let's see, how do I do this? I thought I had it up before. Let me see. Let me minimize this. Ah, there it is. Yeah, I knew I had it somewhere. And then this is your class, Biology 1161, Section 90. And if you look, over here to the left of your screen, I'm assuming your screen looks like this. The material for practical 1, 2, and 3. So I clicked on this, material for practical 2. And here we are. This is everything you need to know. Now there's some pictures and some files and PowerPoint and so forth. And I'm going to go over what you need to know specifically, okay? And starting with the integumentary system. You see right here, this is basically the only thing that we're going to study as far as the skin, the integumentary system. And what I also have on here, if you click, I think it's this one, you click on this, and there's a checklist of material that you need to know. And so that's real convenient to help you study and, make sure you know everything. And so I think I have that one open. It just says integumentary system fall 2019. I mean, that's when I put it together. And I change the date whenever I edit it, and it hasn't needed editing in a while, so it's still pretty good. So I'm been still using it. And if you download this or just open this, it should look something like this. And what I'm going to do, let's see if I can pull this off. I'm going to do like a split screen, I think. Can I do that? Yeah. Okay, look, I'm going to put this is your handout right here. And here's your model over here. I'm going to kind of make it about like that. Can you guys still see what I'm doing? Does this make sense? Can you see it? Somebody tell me. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you can see 2 screens. Okay. I hope. There. This doesn't need to be that. Maybe I can make this one a little bit smaller, make this one a little bit bigger. Something about like that. That looks pretty good, I think. I mean, you'll be able to go over this however you want to. just for recording purposes, I kind of wanted to make it a decent size so you can kind of see it. But I'll be just going back and forth, between these two images. One image of the handout and the other one of the model. And this is what I would normally do in lab, is I'd give everybody this handout over here. And, I'd go through this and point out the stuff on the model. And this is the exact same model we have in lab. And so I tell everybody, make sure you find all this stuff, and I'm going to use this model on your practical, et cetera. And that's what I'm doing for your next practical or your my courses exam, I guess. I'll use this and point out stuff and ask you questions. Okay. And this is the types of questions I'm going to ask you over here. And so the integumentary system, first of all, I want you to be familiar with the model, what's going on here. It says three body regions: capitis, axilla, planta. So that's some of your if you're in my lecture, you kind of know about this when I talk about body regions and terminology, that kind of stuff. Capitis means the top of your head. Axilla means it's your armpit, and planta is the bottom of your foot. And so if you look carefully at this model, it is actually three models in one. There's a 1/3 right here, and then 1/3 right here in the middle, and then the last third from here to here. Okay, see that? So 1, 2, 3 parts of the body. This first part right here, that's the top of the head. This is the armpit here in the middle, and this is the bottom of the foot over here in the far right. Okay, and of course you look, it's all skin, it's all integument, but there's differences that you'll see in the three parts of the body. And so we go over that. So there's that. Make sure you know your three regions. Know which one's which. Okay. And then next I have regions of the integument. And we talked about this in lecture, epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. Those are not really three regions of the skin per se, but just three regions associated with the integument. But the first layer is the epithelial lining, the very superficial most layer, that's the epidermis. And you can see all that, this is kind of, what color is that? Bluish, purplish kind of look right there. If you drew like a bracket, you can do a bracket and include all these things right here. So all these are like sub-layers of it. And that's what I have listed here. It's the sub-layers of the epidermis. Now that you look, they're not all the same everywhere. There's subtle differences. Well, some big differences. But I don't know if I could, let's see. That's probably as big as I can get it right here on the screen, I think. I clicked on it. I don't know what that's going to do. Oh, look, I can make, yeah, there we go. I got my little, see my little magnifier. Click, it's bigger. Yeah, that's pretty nice. And then I can go back and forth like this. Okay, you see that? That's nice. So these are the layers. They're listed in order from superficial to deep. So, for example, stratum corneum, that's the superficial most layer. See this kind of flesh-colored boundary from here to here? That's the stratum corneum. Now this is the stratum corneum on the foot. You see how close, and then it's very thick. Opposed over here, this is the armpit, that real thin superficial layer right there. That's the stratum corneum in the armpit. And then this kind of shaggy, flaky layer right there, that's this stratum corneum on the top of the head. Okay, so there you go. The superficial layer and all three parts of the body. Okay, now the next layer, deep, it says here stratum lucidum, but I have in parentheses planta only, which means you would only find this layer on the bottom of the foot. And so here you go, going down, you see this white line right there. That's the stratum lucidum. Notice that over here in the other two areas, you don't have that white line. So it doesn't exist. So it's only in the feet. And by the way, it's also on your hands and feet, planta and axilla, or I'm sorry, planta and palmar regions only. And we talked about that in lecture as well. Okay, so there's that. And then next, the stratum granulosum. Now, that's the grainy layer. Remember that? That's that. See stratum granulosum with the point of that blue line right there. That's what would come after the stratum lucidum. However, it's what comes after the stratum corneum everywhere else. And so you can see this dark blue line. There it is right there. All the way across. See all the way across in the top of the head and then the armpit. And then it can, on the foot as well. So there's that. And then the stratum spinosum. This is a pretty thick layer, pretty prominent layer. So this makes up most of the epidermis, other than like this big thick layer right here. But it's pretty thick right there. You see it? It's all this area here. I don't know what color that is. Kind of light, purplish, pinkish layer. I don't know what color would you say that is? I don't know. Kind of a rose color, maybe. I don't know. Purplish kind of color right here. You can see it labeled right here, stratum spinosum, all this. That's the spiny layer. Now that's everywhere, all parts of the body. It occurs, and it's basically the same thickness everywhere. And that's the living layer. That's the living layer where you got the living keratinocytes, and they're making keratin. In lecture, we call it the site of keratinization. Okay, or it includes part of the stratum malpighi if you're in my lecture. If you're not, just don't worry about it. That's lecture stuff. But anyway, there's that. And then finally, the deepest layer right here, the stratum basale. You see they label here, stratum basale. That's the single layer of cells. You barely see this right there at the basement membrane. So I call it stratum basale for basal, right? That's the basal layer. Also in my lecture, I also call it the stratum germinativum because that's the germ layer. That's the mitotically active layer. You kind of see this kind of a little bit darker than the stratum spinosum. It goes all the way across. And so it's the same thickness in any parts of the skin, which is 1 cell layer thick. It's 1 cell layer thick of low columnar keratinocytes. That's what I'll describe it in the lecture anyway. But that's it. So that's all your stratum, all your epidermis, all your different strata, okay? Now, if you scooch down a little bit like this, do they label it over here? I don't think that, well, I figure they label it somewhere. Maybe it's over here. Maybe I'm gonna make it smaller. I guess they don't. Well, good thing I'm here to point it out to you, huh? Let me make it a little bit smaller. Next is the dermis, and then the dermis is basically everything between the epidermis and then all this yellow stuff right here is supposed to be fat. So from here to here, that's all this, flesh-colored tissue right here. See all this? This is all dermis. But the dermis itself is stratified. It occurs in 2 distinct layers. There's a papillary layer and a reticular layer. See that over here? Papillary layer, reticular layer. The papillary layer is the layer that has all the papillae, the dermal papillae. And see these little bumps that come up like that? Bump, bump, bump. And there's some subtle little bumps right here. Bump, bump, bump. But everywhere you got those little bumps, you got these little red and blue structures. See that? Those are blood capillaries. So dermal capillaries. So those papillae are to accommodate those capillaries. See the little red and blue things? Here they're kind of shows you a little arterial, and then it kind of it changes from red to blue. And here they kind of section them a little bit different. I don't know why, but that's what it's supposed to represent. So basically from here up, from here, where you see the red and blue, see all that? That's all the papillary layer. Now, in that layer, the connective tissue that's in that layer is areolar connective tissue. Okay, remember that's a loose connective tissue because you don't want dense connective tissue up in there because you got to make room for capillaries and other little structures like you see here. And so that's that. I think that's all I say. Papillary layer, which is areola connective tissue, including dermal capillaries within the dermal papillae. Okay, so all that information is fair game. Basically, on your practical, I'd point to stuff. I say, what is this? What are these things? The dermal capillaries, and these are dermal papillae. Stuff like that. So just be familiar with all that. And then you see, like right about here down, where you don't really have capillaries anymore, from here to here, that's all the reticular layer. And the reticular layer, that's all your dense irregular connective tissues. You can kind of see some swirly looking fiber looking structures in there. That's all collagen fibers. And you see it everywhere. See here, 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 just in and around all the structures that are in the skin there. Okay, so that's the dermis, and then underneath the dermis, of course, the hypodermis. Let me zoom out here. That's all this yellow is supposed to represent fat or adipose connective tissue. See, adipose, and that's the subcutaneous fat. So that's the tissue under the skin, and that's basically all there is for that. And that kind of wraps up the skin. So next, I have kind of structures associated with the skin, or what we call accessory structures. Scroll down a little bit like this, beginning with the cutaneous glands, the different glands of the skin, and you can kind of see these white structures and the big yellow one right here. Those are all different glands. Okay, the sebaceous glands, those are the oil glands. Okay. And if you click on here, and let me zoom back out for a second. Obviously, I was hoping you guys would recognize these as all hair. There's hair sticking out of the skin. Notice there's no hair on the bottom of the feet. That makes sense, right? But everywhere else, you got these black things. That's all hair. And then down in the skin, the hair follicles. Then I'm going to zoom in on one of these. Here's a hair follicle right here, the hair coming out of it. See this blue thing that's kind of bumpy looking, attached to the outside of the follicle? That's the sebaceous gland. Those are the ones that make oil. And the oil kind of wicks up the shaft of the hair and comes out like that. Here's a sebaceous gland that's sectioned open so you can see the inside of it. And this is, again, a simple alveolar gland, it makes this sebum, the oil. And that's it. That's that gland. And then there's eccrine sweat glands, or sometimes they're called American sweat glands, or in lecture I like to call them true sweat glands because they're the ones that produce true sweat. And these guys are everywhere. These are these white structures here, and here's one sectioned open, and here's another one. Now this model right here, for some reason, I didn't take this picture. I kind of hijacked it off the internet, but we have this model in our lab, and it actually extends over here a little bit more. And when they took this picture, they cropped it and they chopped it off right here. So you're missing some stuff. But anyway, what you're missing is the proportion of sweat glands on the three different parts of the body. You got one here, you got one here, and if you saw this one, you would see that there's like 3 or 4 more on the section of the body that's supposed to represent your feet. Your hands and feet have more sweat glands per square unit of area than any other parts of your body. Your hands and feet are sweaty, right? Or they can get that way. And so that's another thing that kind of are trying to show you here. And they all open up, most of them anyway, open up to the surface by these little pores. And you can't really see right here, you can kind of see a pore. There's a pore there. And there would be a pore here. That's just the hair in the background. It's not coming out of this or anything. Those are, there's a pore, and then there's another pore right there. And there'd be a pore right there. So those are your true sweat glands. Now, they're everywhere. And then there's the apical sweat glands. These are what I call the false sweat glands. These are the ones that only occur in this model right here in the center, this big yellow one right here. See this one? This is the apical sweat gland or the false sweat gland. This is the armpit sweat gland. You know, this is the only place in your body you have these, basically in your crotch and your armpit. And these are the ones that are active. They're the scent glands, you know, that make you smell like an adult. You know, so that's what they look like. They're large. And confined to those areas. And the secretion is chemically a little bit different, or actually a lot different than the American sweat glands. But anyway, here they are. The only place you'd see it, you know, of these three parts of the body be right here in the armpit. Okay, so that's that. And then we have the hair. Okay, and then basically what I have listed here in your little checklist are just regions of the hair, starting with the follicle. The follicle is just basically, if you follow the epidermis and it kind of makes it dips down like this and comes back up like that, it's kind of like a gland itself, like an exocrine gland. And that's the hair follicle. You have them everywhere except on the bottom of your foot. So this bluish thing, and then, you know, it's layered and so forth. I'm not worried about the different layers of the follicle, but just, you know that's what you're looking at. That's the hair follicle. And then the root and the shaft, okay, that's portions of the hair, okay? And so I think they label that somewhere. I'm gonna say hair shaft. But basically what the shaft is the visible part of the hair that's extending out of the follicle. And then anything that's enclosed by the follicle, they're in the skin right here, that's the root. So from here down to here is the root. Now the bulb, that's actually a part of it's the base of the follicle. Let me scooch over here. Well, the bottom right here. Here it's a little bit wider down here. It's the big bulbous wide part of the follicle where the hair formation is taking place is in the hair bulb. And then the erector pili, or the piloerector muscle, that's a little band of smooth muscle right here. Let's see what they label it. You know, the erector pili. Yeah, they call it. Sometimes in lecture I call it the piloerector muscle. Same thing. This is the muscle that contracts, makes your hair stand up. So it gives you goosebumps. You know, now the goosebumps that's just kind of an artifact of these contracting. And basically, what happens is that a goosebump is the skin around the hair. It just kind of attached to it, and it kind of pulls the skin up. It makes like a cone around the hair shaft. And that's what you think of, or what you see as a goosebump. Is there another name for goosebump? I don't know if there's a technical term for goosebumps or frissons. Is that what you call them? Some people call them goose pimples, but that sounds kind of gross. Goosebump, goose pimples. How about chicken zits? Yeah. Anyway, there's that. That's all parts of the hair. Now, and then finally, the last thing I have listed are nervous system structures. These are some sensory things associated with the skin, and they're everywhere, but they're most prominent in the hands and feet. And so they only really are represented on the foot third of your model here. See these little things up in the dermal papillae right here? Those are the Meissner's corpuscles or tactile corpuscles. You see that? See how they have them labeled? Yeah, tactile. And then the Pacini's corpuscles, or the lamellated or lamellar corpuscles, or Pacinian corpuscles. That's this real, here they call it lamellated. Kind of looks like a cross section through a onion or something. The big onion looking thing is deep down in the hypodermis. That's Pacini's corpuscle, okay, or the Pacinian corpuscle. That's for deep pressure, you know, the skin deep, you know, pressure. For light touch, that's what the Meissners are up there, real close to the epidermal dermal junction. Okay, And boys and girls, that's it. That's all you need to know for the skin. Okay. So what else do we need to know? Well, there's the skin, and then there's also the muscles. Now, there is a muscle handout. You click on that, and it's a whole list of muscles that I would normally give to my students in the lab. Now, what this is a key to a little muscle guy like this. And but I opted not to do this semester and last semester because it requires you to be in the lab and, you know, examining this model in person. And, you know, I didn't want to do that this semester because that would kind of violate our social distancing and all that kind of stuff. And so we can't really handle models this semester. And so to cover the muscles, basically what I did is I took 2 images from one of my textbooks and shared them with you here. This is the superficial skeletal muscles posterior view, and then the superficial skeletal muscles anterior view. And this is what I'm going to use to quiz you on the muscles. And that's it. And if you study this, I'm not going to go through and point out and talk about all these. I'm going to be kind of dry and redundant, but study these 2 images. And what I'll do for your practical, they got leaders pointing to, I'll use the same images, and expect you to be able to identify these same muscles again. Okay. But here to study them, these are the ones you need to know. So just learn posterior muscles and anterior muscles. If you want to look at these other ones, fine, but I'm not going to use images from the model. I'm only going to use images for these 2. Okay. And that's it. So that was pretty easy, wasn't it? For a lab. Next week, we will start the skeleton. Let me see. Let me go right here. Right here. And there's a PowerPoint for this. I'm excited about this. I put this together, and it's on. Let's see. Okay, right here. Human Osteology PP. See, fall 2020. I made it last semester. And we're going to go over that. We're going to spend 2 weeks on it. We're going to, the first week, just go over the skull. And I'll go through the PowerPoint and talk about the things that are pointed out. And then the week after that, the rest of the skeleton. And that's how I traditionally do it. So that will be next week. Skull and then disarticulated skeleton. And in 3 weeks from today is your practical. So how about that? You have any questions about anything? Think y'all can handle that? I think you can. It's not too bad. So let me look at you for a sec. If I can, let's see. Where are you? Oh, here you are. Look at all my students. Okay, there you guys are. So there's 15 of y'all here today, which is about half the class or so. But that's it for this week. So no questions. You guys are good? Okay, well, I will see you next week. Stay warm.